Is tonight LeBron's last game in the land?
Well, I'm going to say no for the moment because I did pick the Cavaliers to win this series, and even though it doesn't look good, I'm not going to jump off the bandwagon. It is what it is. I'll go down with the ship. I'm not very confident in them at all. I'm disgusted by what I've seen from them collectively on the offensive side of the ball. They've just been abysmal, to say the least. But in the end, if they win tonight and they win Game 7, they have a game in the finals in Cleveland. It could be his last game, but I'm not going to say that at this particular moment in time because I definitely think they're going to win tonight. And who knows how people are going to act in Game 7 outside of LeBron. And that's on both teams. We'll see.
Yeah, it's his last game in Cleveland. I think the ride ends in Game 7 in Boston. So I think this is it for LeBron in Cleveland, and he would be crazy to stay in Cleveland at this point. The organization is incapable without LeBron of doing anything. I mean, he was the #1 pick overall when he got there because they stunk. He got there and suddenly they were good. They even went to a finals, and they did an awful job of putting anything around him. He carried one of the worst finals teams ever to the finals. And then when he came back, the reason he came back was because they had a lot of good players, because every year they were picking #1 overall in the draft. They were picking #1 overall in the draft so often. They took who was it? Michael Bennett with a #1 overall pick, and survived it, and still had Kyrie and all these guys.
Anthony Bennett.
Anthony Bennett. I said Michael Bennett was a fighter. Anthony Bennett.
Right.
Anthony Bennett with a #1 overall pick, and still had Wiggins. They could trade for Kevin Love and Kyrie and everything. And once he leaves, and then they were unable to do anything when Kyrie wanted out. They were unable to really put a team around LeBron. And once he leaves, it's over. So I expect LeBron to go ham tonight and drop a 40-point triple-double, as he is wont to do in these situations, in Cleveland to win Game 6. But they're going down in Game 7, and then he's got to get out of town.
Stephen A., at this point, I mean, I know you don't want him to be a mercenary and going all around the league, but does he really owe the city of Cleveland anything else? I mean, he came back and brought him a chip.
He owes them nothing.
Yeah.
He owes them nothing. He owes them nothing. They can't say anything about him because he came back and delivered on a promise. And once you do that and you end more than a half-century drought, and you go to 3 straight NBA finals, possibly a 4th because it's still not over yet. You owe this town, you owe this city, you owe the Northern Ohio area, you owe them nothing. You've given them more than they could have ever hoped for, and they have to thank their heavenly stars that they had you for as long as they had you. The first 7 years of his career, plus these last 4 years, that would be 11 years that he spent in the city of Cleveland. And it's very little, it's little to nothing more that he could have possibly done for them. On the basketball court, he's been phenomenal. Off the basketball court, he's been every bit as great, if not more so, in terms of his philanthropy and what he has meant to that area, to the local economy and beyond. You can't do much more than he has done. He owes them nothing at all.
Max, let me ask you this, and I know, Stephen A., you've said L.A., and I think, Max, you've said Philly in terms of where you think he should go. But for
Houston at this point.
Okay, Houston at this point. For them not to lose tonight, who else needs to step up? Because he's not getting much help.
Listen, it's Kevin Love, who's the all-star caliber player. Kevin Love's, and by the way, his game is he rebounds, he passes, he shoots from the outside, he can post. He does the kind of things that they can use. And look, I know, like I mentioned, Rodney Hood is a guy who you could have hopes for, could be at least an average starter. He's not that. He's a good rotation piece, but he's not an average starter in the NBA. Sorry, he's not the 15th best guy at his position or anything like that. And there's no one else. J.R. Smith is not. Kyle Korver's a nice player in a certain role, but also none of those guys are really starters in the NBA, not on a championship team. Maybe if they had incredibly strong talent around them, one of those guys could start, you could hide them a little bit, or they could do a very specific thing for you. But otherwise, these are all rotation pieces. The only guy who's even starting caliber on the entire team is Kevin Love, and he's better than that. Kevin Love was once seen as an MVP caliber player, which was not true at the time. He was being overrated. But he's certainly an all-star caliber player, and he must show up at that level if the Cavs hope to advance.
All right, we'll leave it there, guys.
Max Kellerman.
Go ahead. Yep.
I want to answer your question, Molly.
Sure.
J.R. Smith has got to step up. Listen, I like J.R., but, I mean, come on, man. You're a starting shooting guard in this league. Max Kellerman, the Cleveland Cavaliers have played in 16 playoff games this postseason. J.R. Smith has scored in double figures in 7 of them. Double figures in 7 of them. He's only cracked the 20-point plateau once, okay? And in these 5 games with Boston, his numbers are 4 points, 0 points, 11 points, 9 points, and 2 points in 5 games. You got
saying that's not good?
You got to be good. Listen, you think? 22% shooting from the field. One game he went 0 for 7. That's 0%. The other 2 games, 37 and 33%. And the last game was 16%. Come on, man.
Guess what? When you
Come on
call
now.
for people to ball, Stephen A., it often happens. So now I'm expecting a big game, guys, from both Kevin Love and J.R. Smith.
I'm just saying, well, it didn't happen because I called for JR to drop at least 20 in Game 5, and that didn't happen. I'm not trying to
Stephen
knock
A., who
him.
was
I'm just
JR
saying, my
traded
God,
with
you're
from the
the
Knicks?
shooting guard.
It's escaping me. Who was
Was he
JR traded
with
for?
Iman Shumpert? Iman Shumpert.
Shumpert. Okay.
Oh, you
Let's not
from?
forget for a second. Let's not forget for a second.
Him and
the
Shumpert
Knicks
came to
needed
Cleveland.
to use Shumpert. The Knicks needed to use Shumpert, who was a player who was considered to have value at the time. They needed to use him to get out of the J.R. Smith contract, which wasn't a bad contract. It wasn't for a lot of money. But the way J.R. Smith was regarded at that moment was so bad that the Knicks needed to use an asset to get out of a small contract with J.R. Smith. He reinvented himself or reestablished value with the Cavs. But he was not considered at the time they got him.
I actually liked him in New York. I actually liked him in New York.
Yeah, for a time.
And in Cleveland, he was arguably their best perimeter player. But I mean, these offensive numbers, I got to get more from JR. I got to get more.
Listen, I picked the Cavs to win in 7, but I want Boston to close it out tonight on the road. Let's do it, people.